welcome to Psychology Today with your presenters Ella and Chelsea. Today's controversial topic is the nature of casual sex among university students, specifically focusing on gender differences, alcohol consumption and the psychological effects of this casual sex. The paper we're focusing on today looks at sexual behaviour and mental well-being of just over 400 heterosexual US college students from the University of Tennessee, and this study was published in the peer-reviewed Journal of Sex Research.
So, casual sex has been called many things in past research, such as hookups, friends with benefits, or chance encounters. However, casual sex has been said to be a sexual relationship where the partners do not define their relationship as romantic or their partner as being their boyfriend or girlfriend, for example, with a stranger or with another friend. So, the previous research has a wide amount on this area. For example, surveys revealed that 70 to 85% of sexually experienced adolescents had engaged in a sexual encounter within the last year. There is also past research into the specific topics which this paper will focus on, and they show that there are some trends. So, for example, males engage in more casual sex than females, and there tends to be a direct link between alcohol and casual sex. And in terms of psychological functioning, the college students with a history of casual sex had lower self-esteem.
So, a quick overlook of the methods used. Firstly, general information on the participants' background was found, along with some information on their sexual history. They were also asked about their sexual behaviours, infidelity and the influence of alcohol or substance use using the Sexual Behaviours Questionnaire. And this asked questions such as, have you ever had sex with someone who you do not consider to be your boyfriend or girlfriend, and include a 6-point behavioural frequency scale to rate the frequency of this behaviour. They also measured the depressive symptoms of the partners using the Centre of Epidemiologic Studies depression scale. So the results that this study found were very interesting indeed. First of all, it was found that casual sex is in fact fairly common among the participants. More than half of the sexually experienced participants reported that they had participated in casual sex with people whom they weren't involved in a romantic relationship.
Consistent with previous research, the results have shown that males are more involved with casual sex experiences than females, so gender plays an important role in predicting these casual sex encounters. However, for the most part, both males and females are aware of the casual nature of their encounter, but females are more likely to expect the encounter will evolve into a romantic relationship.
Right, so we're very lucky to have two leading psychologists in the film joining us after the break, so stay tuned. So welcome back to the show. We're very excited to have here with us Catherine Gremo, and she's one of the leading psychologists who conducted the study. We also have with us Jenni Harries, who's a leading psychologist in the field of sex research. So how would you interpret the results that you found in this study?
The results found were extremely interesting in terms of how college students understand the nature of casual sex and also the implications and consequences that casual sex can have on different genders. There were obvious gender differences in the results, and these often offer an interesting insight into the differences in attitudes between young men and women towards casual sex. Gender consequently plays a very important role in predicting casual sex encounters, and my results also prompt us to question the reasons behind these gender differences, and this can often open up a wide and interesting debate.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So again, thanks for being on the show with us today, Jenny. Just what are your thoughts on the study as a whole?
I think, whilst I found it very interesting to read, one of the main issues I found was the chosen subculture of university students. So I think this is a very particular group of people for whom casual sex can often seem like a social norm, and they experience peer pressure to go out and consume alcohol, go into clubs and to have casual sex. So for this reason I think the results may be very different if you take a different subculture, such as working professionals.
Right, I see. Yeah, that's true.
I think, in addition, the cross-sectional design of the study does not permit us to infer causality in the fact that alcohol consumption and casual sex are correlated doesn't necessarily mean that the two behaviours are linked. Maybe, but they both happen to occur in high proportions at university, where students are in a very unique stage of their lives.
Yeah, right. So, did you find any other limitations with this study then?
I also thought that the study didn't take into account the numerous other factors that may affect students' sensory and psychological well-being, such as their academic performance, family background, other social and sexual relationships.
Yeah, that's a very good point.
And again, the study is based on research collected from self-report questionnaires. However, this makes the results less reliable, I'd say, because Cardwell and Flanagan found that social desirability bias may have played a large role in students' answers, particularly because the topic is so sensitive and there's a lot of stigma surrounding casual sex.
Yeah, that was an issue that we found when we were conducting the study.
So this self-report limitation that you mentioned, specifically looking at whether women would really disclose the truth about their sexual encounters, do you think this has any connotation in view of society's expectations of women's sexuality?
I'd say previous research has shown that social norms and expectations continue to define sex as acceptable for men and objectionable for women. And this may mean that women in this study lied about the amount of casual sex they had because it's less socially acceptable. And research has also shown that females are more conservative when talking about sex, whereas males are a lot more permissive. And so these attitudes may lead women to have less casual sex compared to men, because according to the social learning theory, when behaviour is negatively reinforced, we tend to avoid it. So when women experience negative reactions from others after having casual sex, they will try not to engage in that behaviour in the future. And research has also shown that men find promiscuous women less attractive. And so this view in society will obviously mean that women maybe want to have less casual sex.
Yeah, I see. So you mentioned social learning theory. Are there any other theories that could be applied to this?
There's been one theory describes sex as a social exchange in which women are sellers and men buyers of sex. And so society endows female sexuality with value and not male sexuality. So this helps define their gender roles in that differing attitudes towards casual sex, because for men casual sex is a purchase, whereas for women they're selling some of their value. So it has higher consequences for them, which would make them less likely to engage in that behaviour. And there's also a social constructionist approach which has developed more recently, which says that women are becoming more open to casual sex with the rise of feminism, and this is due to women responding to their oppressed position in society and male subjugation by attempting to demonstrate that casual sex is the same for men and women and attitudes towards it should be the same.
Yeah, those are all some really interesting points. Catherine, what is your take on these gender differences in attitudes?
In my opinion, the evolutionary theory is a very successful theory in explaining the gender differences in attitudes towards casual sex. The evolutionary theory explains that men and women have always had different mating strategies and preferences. So typically men would prefer to mate with a larger number of sexual partners in comparison to women who prefer just the one sexual partner. Men also, as Jenny said, tend to have more permissive sexual attitudes than women, and these attitudes can often extend to behaviour. So for example, Russell Clark and Elaine Hatfield carried out a study in which they sent male and female research assistants across a university campus, and the assistants approached people of the opposite sex and asked them to have casual sex. The results show distinct differences between the different genders in terms of their attitudes and their behaviour. So women typically responded very negatively, and not one woman agreed to have casual sex, whereas 3 out of 4 men agreed to the offer.
Yeah, it's quite an interesting piece of research.
Yeah, definitely. So the sexual strategies theory suggests that mating preferences and strategies reflect inherited tendencies, and these are a result of ancestral adaptive problems faced by both genders. So men had the most to gain from sleeping with a large number of sexual partners in order to increase their chance of fathering the most offspring. They would do this by increasing the number of sexual partners they have. However, women have nothing to gain from having a large number of sexual partners. Instead, they'll search for one mate who's willing to commit time and effort and energy in order to help care for the offspring. So according to some psychologists, such as Buss in 2007, these differing strategies which ensure reproductive success for both genders have now become a part of our biological nature.
Okay. So we see a few different psychological theories at play there with the gender differences. Now, one of the most intriguing findings of this study was to do with the psychological effect of casual sex and gender differences within that. So it was found that women who had more casual sexual encounters actually had higher depressive symptoms, whereas men it was the opposite, and they actually had lower depressive symptoms.
Yeah, so this association between casual sex and depressive symptoms is extremely provocative and relevant in terms of the psychological health of these students who are engaging in casual sex. Catherine, what are your views on this?
So, for me, I think the association is one of the most important and obviously concerning findings of the research.
Yeah, definitely.
Our paper found that women who were more psychologically distressed were more likely to engage in casual sex with psychologically healthy males. However, obviously, if casual sex is one of the causes of increased depression in females, then this could lead to a very vicious cycle for more vulnerable women. It's also been found that in general, women are twice as likely to suffer from depression as men, without even adding in the factor of casual sex. So it's important to ask the question that, if so, by engaging in casual sex, are women increasing their chances of suffering from depression?
Yeah, it's very worrying.
So we've actually just had a comment in from a viewer who said that he found a study that contradicted the results you found. It was in 2013, and it found that depression was highest with students who engage in casual sex, but that there wasn't actually a gender differences here.
Okay.
But we'd just like to express that this study in 2013 had quite surprising results, and a meta-analysis from 1993 to 2007 found that there was a difference to do with gender in terms of anxiety, guilt and depression, and this is usually quite a common finding in studies like this.
Okay.
So now moving on to our next topic, which is the link between alcohol consumption and casual sex at universities.
Yeah, so Catherine's study had some really interesting results. First, that 65% of participants who had engaged in a casual sex encounter reported that prior to this they had drank alcohol.
Yeah, we also found that a third of respondents reported meeting their most recent casual sex partner either at a party or in a bar.
Yeah.
So both environments that encourage the consumption of alcohol. So whilst your article does suggest that there is a direct relationship or link between the two, other researchers are slightly more sceptical of this, suggesting that it might possibly just be a coincidence. So Cooper, for example, in 2002, reported that the prevalence of alcohol consumption and casual sex were both so high independently that it's highly likely that the co-occurrence of these two variables may just make it appear like there is a relationship between the two, when in fact there isn't.
Right. And touching on something Jenny's just said, we had a comment in from a viewer who said that this is a very specific sample that we're looking at here, where perhaps alcohol consumption and casual sex are quite encouraged. If you look at something like Freshers' Week, where drinking is a consistent theme. So perhaps if it was a different sample, perhaps at different ages, the link might not be there.
Yeah, it's definitely a good point. However, I think it is important to note that even if there is no causal relationship between these two, the data clearly shows that there's high levels of alcohol consumption and casual sex amongst this age group, and so they may have really important implications in terms of sexual education. So increasing awareness of the relationship between casual sex and substance use among these college students may prepare them for circumstances where casual sex encounters are likely to occur, such as these parties or bars where they report meeting them. And so, for example, in Catherine's recent article, it suggests that some college students may want to abstain from these behaviours, so such as alcoholic drinking or even going to the parties, to try and prevent the casual sex from happening.
Just touching on that, we had a comment in from a student at a university, and they mentioned that they found this quite offensive to young people, perhaps suggesting that they didn't have as high self-control as adults, and perhaps suggesting that they didn't go to these parties is quite an extreme and unnecessary measure. What was your take on that?
I mean, by putting that point into the article, it sounds very extreme. However, it was more about raising awareness about the effects of alcohol and casual sex, and obviously how these can lead on to the depressive symptoms in women and more other psychological consequences. So whilst this is merely a suggestion, it might actually make a difference in a college student's life.
And I think
that's a very good point.
Yeah, the thing you say about awareness is really key too, because I think professionals who look after students' mental health, such as therapists, need to be aware of both the link between alcohol consumption and emotional well-being and these depressive symptoms that we found, and looking at women and the gender differences too.
Yeah, it's definitely worth them knowing, so they can help those who are in those situations. So Catherine, just to end the show, are there any further points of research that you're interested in after this recent article?
I think basing some of the future research ideas on Jenni's methodological flaws with the article, we'd like to look at a different subculture. So, for example, this study was mainly based on university students, and it might be a good idea to branch out and look at working professionals or older adults and see what their differences are and what their attitudes are towards casual sex.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah, I mean, our study was mainly focused on heterosexual individuals, and it might also be interesting to look at homosexual and bisexual individuals and see whether there are any gender differences there, and if so, what the consequences of casual sex are for those individuals as well.
Yeah.
I look forward to seeing those results, definitely.
Yeah.
That's all we have time for today, but thank you so much for coming in. We really appreciate your time.
Yeah.
It's a really interesting topic.
Definitely had some interesting points brought up.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Make sure you join us next week for our other controversial topic, which is drug use at universities. Thank you very much.